ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Three Shop. I am your host, Matty B, a.k.a. the Crazy Desert Vet. The Three Shop is brought to you by Type 2X Performance Fitness, where we train you to unleash your inner beast. Let's get this party started. I'm just releasing more the warpath, not your average. I'm a soldier. Big Bang Theory. I'm going to talk about the Big Bang Theory in a way that will invoke thought and make you say, I'm going to paint you a picture that you may never really thought about. So let's get into this. The Big Bang Theory, as we know, is a very popular comedy or sitcom nowadays. It's about Mensa-fied best friends and roommates, Leonard and Sheldon, who are physicists who work at the California Institute of Technology. Now, they also have an assortment of friends. They have Penny, who has no last name. Well, as of now, she does. Last name, of course, would be Hofstetter. Raj or Rajesh Kutterpally. Howard Wolowitz. Bernadette Wolowitz, who's Howard's wife. And then Amy Farrah, in quotation, Fowler. Let's dig into this, because I like to think sometimes, and I hate to say it, and I know my brother's right. He's like, he tried so hard during the comic book conversation to call me to say I wasn't a nerd. But in fact, I know I do have some nerd tendencies. You look at me like, nah, that dude's a job. I like to think a lot. So I'm like Big Pun. I like to think a lot. Okay. Leonard Leakey Hofstetter. This is Sheldon's roommate. He's also a PhD along with Sheldon. Now, when you first see Leonard, the way he talks, you see that he's awkwardly shy, not really sure of himself. But I would beg to differ. I would say, in reality, Leonard uses that persona as a ploy. Now, out of the group of men, Leonard is the most accomplished with the ladies. This is true. Outside of the North Korean spy, he had coitus with some very successful women, to include one rich cougar that, even though she said that she did not post a grant to his institution because of his sacrifice, and he did it just because, we all know the deal. He dated doctors, lawyers, and eventually his love of his life, Penny. Now, it's kind of odd that the lawyer, who probably was Penny's biggest threat and was Rajesh or Raj Kutterpally's sister, probably was out of all the women that we've seen Leonard with, the best looking, because she was exotic. And she really did get under Penny's skin, and vice versa. Now, as I break things down, you can probably see why each one of those relationships didn't really make it. Now, Penny, who he just so happened to bump into when he saw her moving in, this is the one he's chased the most through the series. Okay. And eventually he got her. Okay. Eventually he did get her. And they became boyfriend and girlfriend. She began to miss him. She began to miss his ways. Now, her accolades up to this point, she was a B movie actress where she appeared topless. And she was also a waitress at the Cheesecake Factory. Now, outside of her being, Midwestern pretty, she didn't really bring anything to the table from what Leonard was usually dating. He was dating doctors, lawyers, even a spy, although he didn't know, unbeknownst to him. But these were all accomplished women. But yet and still, these relationships didn't last. Now, what separated those women from Penny? I would suspect her promiscuity and her bedroom skills probably was enough for him to I found the one. Now, like I said, you're thinking that he's actually awkward and shy. When in actuality he's not. It is a ploy that he uses to get women. And that's never been really a question of him getting women or not, because he can get women. Now let's go ahead and talk about his wife Penny, whose last name has never been identified up until the time she married Leonard. As previously stated, she was a waitress, or a part-time waitress and part-time actress, so to speak. Now, through many subplots, it's been made no secret that she was a serial dater. Now, outside of dating Leonard, she actually had 6 boyfriends that we can count. Um, the question is, why Leonard? What attracted her to Leonard? One can state the obvious, that he was freakishly intelligent and very persistent. He just wore it down. And her history with men has shown that they tend to not treat her well and never really stayed with her. They cheated on her. There were some things about the men she was dating that didn't really jive with her. Now, except for Zach, who was incredibly dumb, she really couldn't work with it. He was just too dumb. But here's the thing. None of those men could she manipulate. She could not manipulate not one of those men. One, I will admit, was married and was cheating on his wife with Penny. She found out she did the right thing. She cut the cord. But it seems that she can manipulate Leonard through sex. And that is the thing that attracted her most. She had a man, an intelligent man, and she controlled him. And she still controls him, whether it be through sex. Before he was seen to the point that he was so distraught that if he left her, he'd be heartbroken. And then they showed scenes of him being hurt, but he was always rebound, and he would rebound with something better. Think about that. Now, the weird thing about Penny, outside of being a serial dater, Sheldon saw her naked before Leonard. At some point, Raj saw her naked and was perceived that she had sex with Raj, which was ultimately debunked that it never happened. And during the time that Leonard and Penny were broken up, she had a little thing with Stewart. Now, although Stewart had his own business, by far was less of a conquest for Penny. And as you see from the last 3 men, Penny had her moments as a Black Widow, but without the killing part. At least not yet. Watch out, Leonard. So on that one, because Leonard plays his game, Penny plays her game, the relationship seems to be at a stalemate. And I believe that's what keeps their relationship on edge. Now, Howard Wolowitz. He works with Raj, Leonard, and Sheldon, and he is an accomplished aerospace engineer. He's also a NASA astronaut. Now, the self-proclaimed playboy who lived with his mother for his adult life, up to his adult life, I guess you could say he was the most successful. Although he's the only one in the group that's not a doctor, he's the only one that actually went to space. So he had an accreditation that none of them had, and probably all of them wanted, outside of the ladies. Now, up to this point, he was the main skirt chaser of the group. But everybody knew he was full of doo-doo. No matter what scheme and plot he would come up with, they kind of saw through it. And if you really look at Howard, his M.O. was 18 to 80, blind, crippled, or crazy. She can't walk, you'll drag her. He didn't really care. He just wanted to be able to say that he was a woman's man. Now, in which there was one point where Howard did sort of kind of catch a doctor, but he kind of ployed her and said, hey, you want to drive the Mars rover? She went to the school. Bad things happen. Next thing you know, Howard's friend, Leonard, the awkward, shy one, steals his girl. There's no way anyone so awkward and shy would up and steal your girl. And she's a doctor. And she's funny. And once he was done, because she became too clingy, she was no more of a challenge. See, this is what it was. There was no more of a challenge. Once again, that's one reason why Penny and Leonard's relationship is on the edge, because there's always a challenge there. Once she was no longer a challenge, he dropped her. Now, often Howard does chase women out of his league, which is also kind of crazy because his wife, Bernadette, who was introduced to him by Penny, is clearly out his league, but chose him before Howard chose her. We'll talk about that a little later. Now, Howard and Raj, best of friends. You would kind of think that their friendship was a little off because of the things that they would do and the fact that it would seem that they had a homosexual relationship, but they didn't. They just had a serious bromance. And we'll talk about Raj a little later. It just seems some of the situations they would put themselves in would pit them as boyfriend, girlfriend, man, and wife, with Howard being the man. It seemed to be that way. But it's still odd to me how someone who has been categorized as repulsive could get someone as wholesome as Bernadette. But is Bernadette really wholesome? She's a very small woman who is very pretty, voluptuous, and was instantly attracted to Howard. Instantly. And I think that's what scared Howard in the very beginning. This is not possible because he's constantly rejected by women. This one wants him to the umpteenth degree and was ready to go to third base with him, hit home runs by the third date. Now, for whatever reason, Bernadette, she worked at the Cheesecake Factory, but she was studying to be a microbiologist, or she might have been a struggling microbiologist. To one point, she became equipped with a lot of money, and she was the driving force of that relationship. Now, as they create this woman, okay, very small, you kind of notice that she often raises her voice to where she's large. She is also in charge. Also in charge. Now, between Penny and Bernadette, the one thing that these two women have in common are they are very strong women. Very strong women. And they both run the relationships. Now, everybody has a twist. Everyone has something different. Howard, who is childlike and who has lived with his mother because he is a certified mama's boy, seemed to go from one mother to another, the one that he married, because he still has some of his boyish ways. But once again, just like Leonard, that's his ploy. Now, with Bernadette thinking that she has to take care of Howard, that kind of puts her in a position of authority and power. In reality, Howard is letting her do that. Because as you can see, when it comes down to it, he can make a decision when he chooses to. And he can stand up for himself because at one point he did come close to breaking up with Bernadette when it was time for him to go into space. But once again, as they go back and forth, you kind of see that they're a little bit normal. Now, Sheldon is a whole totally different person altogether. He is a genius or self-proclaimed genius, and I would say at times is genuinely clueless. Now, he was living in the adult world as a child, and he still carries some of those childlike idiosyncrasies. Now, once again, I think Sheldon, he too is playing a role. He's just biding his time until he becomes the ruler of the world. I know you think that is an absurd thought, but it's not. It is the actual truth. He is only buying time until he creates something to make him master of the world. In every subplot with Sheldon, he always believes he's the leader of the group. And in many circumstances, he is. If he doesn't like it, they go get it. If he doesn't want to do it, they don't do it. If he wants to change his plans, they change the plans. The way he manipulates everyone to do his deed, it's easy to see that Sheldon, he longs to be the supreme ruler. Now, even when he imagines his towns, Sheldon's a giant amongst men. Now, the reason he has abstained from women as long as he could is because he didn't need to be distracted by any women to take him off his course of being ruler of the world. Now, until Howard and Raj hooked him up with Amy Fowler, who I would honestly say is his true mate, because in most circumstances, Amy, she too is in charge of the relationship. We have some very strong women. So I'm painting here a picture of some very strong women controlling somewhat intelligent men. And even though Sheldon tried to manipulate the relationship with Amy, when she broke up with him, it set him back. And regardless of who he saw her with, he just could not let it rest. To the point that he saw her with Stewart at one point and just totally disrupted that date and said that it was very repulsive to see her with him. And he just totally disrespected Stewart, and I believe if he was supreme ruler of the world, Stewart would have been evaporated and head chopped off. Now, eventually, Sheldon and Amy have had sex, and they now live together. What makes this couple so compatible, besides their little quirky? Amy is very comfortable that Sheldon will become supreme ruler, and she will rule at his side. As Leonard said in one episode, Sheldon is one lab experiment for becoming a supervillain. Amy, simply put, she's very intelligent companion to Sheldon. Her only flaw would be that she is undersexed and is more than likely to experiment, meaning she would be the first to sleep with another woman and not be ashamed. Now, even though she dated Stewart very briefly, a lot of it was to get Sheldon's attention. And one guy she dated, you would think he was in love with Sheldon. Now, she tends to cater to Sheldon by catering to his ego. And I would say she uses that to her benefit. That way she can continue to maintain her superiority, so to speak. And if you look at it, regardless, if it comes down to making certain decisions, Sheldon goes with it. You know what they say? Behind every good man, it's a great woman. Lastly, we'll go ahead and talk about Raj. Rajesh is probably the most complex individual of the show. The reason why he's the most complex is the fact that he doesn't have a woman. And even though he doesn't have a woman and can get women, he has a couple issues. Now, Rajesh is an astrophysicist, and they normally call him Raj, and I've been calling him Raj throughout the cast. And last name Kuthrapali. He's from New Delhi. He always says that he was poor when in reality his parents were rich, and he despises Indian food. He lacks the knowledge about his own Indian culture. Now, Raj's principal characteristic was his inability to speak to women. You could call it a medical condition known as selective mutism. Now, in this show, Leonard's mother, Beverly Hostetler, stated that he has selective mutism simply because he had an air-side relationship with Howard. Mm, that right there, I mean, if you look at it in that aspect, they tended to gravitate towards one another, and that was his confidant. But like I said, I think we established that they had a bromance. You know, now the only way that he could speak to women was either if he was A, drunk, or B, on some type of medication that enabled him to speak. And eventually he worked his way out of it. Now, he could not keep a woman. Now, he dated a deaf woman, had no problems dealing with her sober because she didn't speak. He dated a very, very, I mean, to the point where it was ridiculous, introverted woman. These women were flawed. And I think that's his issue because he himself is flawed. Someone who was more flawed than him was easier for him to relate to. But ultimately, he became pushy. His true characteristic, because he is a jerk, he can be arrogant. But because of his flaws, he would always push the women away because it became to the point where it would seem that he was trying to take control, but trying to take it in a way that was very demeaning to the women. And so they would often leave him. So at this point, you will see that he dates Stewart because they're always going out. So with Howard getting married, starting his own family, he needed someone else to hang with because Leonard had Penny, Sheldon had Amy. So right now, Raj has Stewart. And often Stewart ask him, "Do you even listen to yourself?" And there's been a question when Raj would say something, he goes, and Stewart would be like, "Well, I could do worse." Both of them are gravitated to each other by flaws. Even though Stewart does have his own business, and he knows some famous people, he is so needy to the point that he cannot move past. And that's one reason why Raj is able to work with Stewart more so because he found someone who's more flawed than himself. So that's how that relationship works even better. But I'm thinking at some point Raj has got to get a woman or come out gay, one or two. So I've actually taken the Big Bang Theory and I've broken it down, and hopefully it'll give you some insight to what I'm talking about. Pretty cool concept to think of it in that way. And if I'm far off, I could be. But once again, it's just my opinion. I'm a thinker, and I want to thank you for your time, and I'm out.